Welcome to another episode of Profit FM. I am on here today with Ben Jordan, taking up co-host duties. How you doing, man?
I'm awesome, man. How are you?
Good, man. I feel like we have the lamest intro in all of podcast. It's just me saying hi.
That's what it is, man. And here's I was kind of thinking about what we could talk about, and man, let me tell you this. And that's a perfect segue. This is a trial and error thing, man. You got to find your way. The first couple episodes, you're going to listen back and you're going to be like, I could have done this differently or that differently, or this works for me, that doesn't work for me. I mean, Vito and I have been doing this podcasting thing since 2008. We were really at the forefront of it, and we've tried every different which way to go about doing it. We've tried different formats, different styles, 3 hours, 1 hour, breaks, no breaks. We've tried all of it, and it's just a trial and error thing, man. So don't get down on yourself because you're like, man, I have the lamest intro. It's just, you know what? Everybody's intro is kind of cold, really. I mean, it's hard to. What do you do? I'm a carnival barker, so I know I just, get the energy level up. I'm used to being a ring announcer and a play-by-play guy for professional wrestling. So I know about injecting enthusiasm into something by just using your voice. And you'll learn that with time, man. So please don't get down on yourself and just keep doing it. If that's the advice I'm going to give you that I hope you take away from this, just keep doing it, because a lot of guys give up because it gets tedious and you don't know if anyone's listening. Here's me and Vito a long time ago stopped caring if anyone listened to our podcasts. We do it because we enjoy doing them. And if you enjoy doing it, then who cares if anyone's listening or not? Just do them and people will find it.
Sure. And one thing we do is we run a week behind. So we recorded the one that goes up this Monday, we recorded last week, and so this one will go a week up from now. So Vito's been totally cool. You've been cool too, man. We're really excited to be on the One Gimmick World.
Yeah, it's a fun time, man. If no one's checked it out, onegimmickworld.com. It's a little something that Vito and I started about a little over a year ago. It's kind of the culmination of what I just talked about, all the trial and error of what we did. We just decided, you know what, instead of going to other websites to host our stuff, we just built our own website, and we decided we're going to invite anyone who wanted to do a podcast. And then that's anyone that's listening to this. If you're at home and you're like, man, I wish I had a place that I could just do a podcast and that would put my stuff up. One Gimmick World. Hit me or Vito up on Facebook. We'd be happy to. We never say no. Whatever you want to talk about, it is completely open. It does not have to be wrestling related. In fact, we do 2 different shows. One that is wrestling related. It's called We Got Heat. We have a lot of different guests, including Stevie Richards that sits in with us on that show. And then we have another show, the kind of flagship show of One Gimmick World, which is In the Rotation, which is the show that Vito and I have been doing since 2008, where we talk about, wrestling always comes into the conversation when it comes to me and Vito bullshitting. It's inevitable, but we try to keep the conversations about wrestling on We Got Heat. Everything outside the world of professional wrestling is what we talk about on In the Rotation, and it is a completely open forum. We talk about anything and everything. We've got some crazy ideas about the world around us, and I know that's something that you're interested in, is some of the things that are a little bit left of center, if you will. Some things that maybe the mainstream doesn't grasp onto or really understand completely. So I'm looking forward to this, man. I'm looking forward to what we get into.
Absolutely. And just a heads up, I'm sure that everybody listening is totally familiar with you. I mean, it's your website. But if you're not familiar with Ben Jordan, you might recognize his voice from IWA commentary. He's done a lot of that stuff. And actually, it was Ben Jordan and Jim Fannin. One of the few things that any of my IWA work that garnered any positive reviews whatsoever was my commentary. And that was mostly that can mostly be attributed to some tricks I learned from Ben Jordan and Jim Fannin. So if you enjoyed that, you can attribute that to them.
There you go. What were some of the pointers that you picked up? What did you steal from me? I'm always curious as to what people have picked up about me.
Well, one of the things I learned was that there needs to be a set play-by-play guy and a set color guy. They're not the same thing. One guy needs to do one needs to do the other. I'm better at color commentary than I am play-by-play. So That's what I like to stick to. I let other guys who know the names, all the moves, call the matches.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, a lot of people don't recognize the difference, especially when it comes to wrestling commentary, especially commentary in IWA Mid-South, because before I got there, while Dave Prazek was the play-by-play guy, it wasn't always him, and, guys would do the play-by-play as well. It wasn't always him doing the strict play-by-play. I tried to be different and I have a degree in broadcasting. I went to school for broadcasting. I worked at the Score Sports Radio 670 in Chicago. It was the number one, still is the number one sports station in Chicago, in the second or third largest market, depending on how you look at it, in the country. I was an executive producer of the morning show there. I hosted shows on the air there. They had a wrestling show, because that's back when wrestling was really hot, and I was able to sit in and co-host some of the shows there on 670 The Score, and Jonathan Hood and Lawrence Holmes back in the day. So I have a broadcasting background. So I tried to bring that to my commentary. So I'm glad that you picked up on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier too when it's not two guys just trying to yell over the top of each other. Like, it's extremely obnoxious when guys do that, and you can tell that's kind of the mark of somebody who has no clue what they're doing. Yeah,
I mean that's a lot of what a lot of the stuff you can see on YouTube now that what people call indie wrestling. Like, I don't think PWG and Chikara and Ring of Honor, those aren't indies. Those are like a step above the indies. When I talk about the indies, I'm talking about those local shows with the group of local guys that aren't trained properly and don't look the part and copy everything off of WWE television. Those are the indies that I'm talking about. Those guys always have commentators that have no idea what it means to actually broadcast anything, of course, which stands to reason, since nobody on those shows really knows what they're doing.
Sure, absolutely. And that kind of actually, this wasn't on my list of stuff, but you mentioned something about people looking the part, and this is always like a hot button subject with people who are in the business, so to speak. And I feel like a huge chunk of the time, the people that get the most upset about this are the people who don't have the right to be the most upset about it.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I don't know, are you familiar with Nick Cutler?
Yeah, I know Nick very well, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of had probably maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, we kind of had a little Facebook spat because he said something about Dean Ambrose wearing a shirt and jeans or whatever. To which I replied, basically, I mean, who are you to question Vince as to whether or not it's appropriate for the WWE? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which turned into this whole huge conversation about, there are people who are very strict in the mindset of a wrestler has to have trunks and he has to have this and he has to have that. And then there are people like me who are more in the vein of, if it makes sense with what they're doing, then it's appropriate gear. Like, for instance, it made sense for the Shield to come out in tactical gear and stuff like that because it fit their gimmick. It makes sense for Dean Ambrose to wear jeans and a tank top, to me, because he's not necessarily presented as a hold for hold wrestler. Now, it wouldn't make sense for Kurt Angle to come out and wrestle in jeans and a t-shirt. You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
And my thing was like for me, for instance, I wrestled 90% of my wrestling career. I wrestled in, if that's what you want to call it, I wrestled in gym shorts and a shirt.
Right.
But then again, I wasn't a wrestler. Like my gimmick was not to wrestle anybody. Like I mean, Necro Butcher explained it to me. His thing was, nobody here paid to see you wrestle anybody. So
right.
So
it's exactly it, man. And Necro is one of the smartest dudes I've ever come across when it comes to both wrestling and just life in general. One of the smartest dudes I've ever encountered. You can never be let down by sitting down and having a conversation with the Necro Butcher. You're always going to come away learning something that you probably didn't know.
Where do you fall on the gear debate?
I probably fall a little bit on the other side than you, especially when it comes to Dean Ambrose. Like I think he desperately needs to put on wrestling gear. I think he needs that for his gear. I think this character that he's currently in with the t-shirt and jeans, it's played out. They lost they lost the steam that he had. And last night, if you haven't watched the pay-per-view, did you watch the pay-per-view last night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Last night was great evidence that the steam is gone. That match was garbage. It was not good. They did not have good chemistry. It did appear that Dean forgot a couple of spots, and Jericho was getting mad at him at some points in the match. Although I'll be honest with you, I missed a long stretch of that match because I was taking a shit. But
that was the time to do it.
Yeah, that was the time, because you could feel that there was no chemistry between those guys. And by the time I was done taking a shit, I came back and they were still wrestling. I couldn't believe it. But Dean Ambrose desperately needs to revamp. Over on We Got Heat, we've had conversations about this where Vito brought up a great point. I guess this was somebody on MLW radio said this, and I think it's brilliant. Dean Ambrose for a while there was teetering on the edge of being Stone Cold Steve Austin or being Spike Dudley. And the difference being they're both brawlers, but one's taken seriously and one's the lovable guy that just couldn't win the big one. Sure. And Dean Ambrose, I think now, the momentum, it's shifted, and he's now more Spike Dudley than he is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the crowd doesn't believe in him the same way they used to. I think he needs to, I thought he needed to come out at WrestleMania with gear on. He looks great in gear. There's no reason for him to wear jeans and a t-shirt. It makes more sense for Bray Wyatt to wear jeans and a t-shirt or those guys. He can be a professional wrestler. And I think, yes, while he's Roddy Piper-esque, where he's more of a brawler, even Roddy Piper wore trunks, and he was a brawler. So, but I think there's two parts to that. The second part of that is, you're right in that there are guys where it makes sense. Necro Butcher should never have worn wrestling gear. It would look stupid for him to wear wrestling gear. Could you imagine him out there in trunks and boots and knee pads? It would look retarded.
Absolutely.
You'd look at him and go, what is this guy doing in the ring? But with him with the cutoff shorts and just being who he is and the bare feet and him coming out, you watch this wild man come out and you're like, you believed in Necro Butcher. You believed that he was this wild man that just couldn't be controlled, and people bought it, and he made money for people. I mean, man, I was there live. Him versus Joe at the ECW arena is one of those matches that still to this day you could pop that DVD in and you will be entertained by that match. It shifted indie wrestling. It shifted a lot of things for deathmatch guys. I think a lot of the guys that came up after that match got opportunities in matches they wouldn't normally have gotten opportunities in had Necro Butcher not shined in that moment. If he didn't hold his own against against Joe in that match and pushed out and didn't come back with the same fire that Joe came at him with, deathmatch guys like Toby Klein and Brain Damage and even Drake Younger and yourself wouldn't have gotten opportunities against guys that are wrestlers because there was a time when that was making money. For Ian, at least, the idea of a wrestler versus a non-wrestler, there was a year or two stretch where it was hot. It was hot. You had Bryan Danielson against Toby Klein. Like whoever would have believed you'd see that, Well,
sure. And the one thing about Toby, man, Toby is, to me, like, I think Toby is one of the most underrated indie workers of all time. That guy can go, not just in death matches, like he can legitimately go.
Yep.
And he's so, and one, he's an awesome dude. I can't say enough good things about Toby Klein. I mean, Toby is one of the coolest people in all of wrestling, and I mean, he's got the work to back up his awesome attitude. So I would have loved to have seen Toby Klein get way more than he got from wrestling. That's for sure.
I agree. I think there was he had some, if I remember correctly, because I was there when he was at his height and he was really starting to make a name for himself. And he had an opportunity with UPS. He was working for UPS, and he had an opportunity to go into a more management role where it was going to make him more money and would be a career for him moving forward outside of wrestling, but it was going to take away from his time in wrestling. And he never really, once he took that job and made that decision, he lost the momentum he had, and I don't know that he ever wanted to regain it. I know I saw him you read his name every once in a while on a show. I don't know the last time I did see him wrestle, but he did lose that scene. But I can't blame a guy for making a decision to go with a real life job, moving forward with an actual career and leaving the wrestling world behind. I can't blame him one bit.
Oh, sure. And for the vast majority of us, there is no, there's no WWE, there's no, lifelong career. So, I mean, you have fun while you can, and when you get the opportunity to make your life better, you're a fool if you don't take it.
Absolutely. It's an interesting It's interesting to see people when they've left the wrestling business for a while. You know, people could call Vito and I very jaded, but it's just we're very realistic and we're very blunt about do it while you're having fun and do it but with the idea of you're going to try to do something bigger with it. But once you realize that it's not going to be a career.
And we are back on the air with Ben Jordan. A little technical difficulty there.
Yeah, man, you know what? Another thing that you will definitely have when it comes to podcasting is you will have technical difficulties. And it's something that pisses Vito off to no end, and it rattles him, and it ruins him for the rest of the show. But I always was one, again, because my broadcasting background, you just roll with the punches. You're going to keep your sanity, man, if you just roll with the punches and don't worry about when technical difficulties happen, because with Skype or whatever service you're using, or for instance, I was just sitting here and for no reason whatsoever, my power completely went off in my house and then came back on a second later, which of course turned my computer off in the middle of our conversation. So sorry about that.
No problem at all, man. And there's a couple of things I wanted to kind of hammer through. I'm going to have to really pay attention to the time now since we're at two different recordings, but one thing that I really wanted to, I wanted to hit a couple of wrestling notes, and then I kind of wanted to move on from wrestling.
Sounds good.
We're both really into aliens, so I do. That's definitely where I want this conversation to end up. But
cool.
First and foremost, man, what is your take on Adam Rose's statement about this substance abuse policy violation?
I didn't hear anything about it. You're gonna have to inform me. I did not hear this statement at all.
So basically, what happened is I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that
he's been suspended. Yeah,
suspended. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Which is funny because it's always the lower card guys. It's never. It's very rarely the main event guy. You know what I mean?
Of course, it was always Evan Bourne. That was his spot to be the guy that gets busted for smoking weed, so that Triple H can not get tested for steroids.
Sure, and while we're talking about that is a tragedy because. Matt Sydal, Evan Bourne, that guy's amazing.
Incredible, absolutely. But he's better off where he is now. Better off in Japan and Ring of Honor. He's probably happier there, to be perfectly honest with you. He got to NXT just a little too early. Sure. He really did. He was there just a little too early. He should have been, if he'd have been Matt Sydal and going there now, it would be a completely different thing for him.
Sure. Well, the fact that, with his size that he got there when he did, speaks enough to his work. I mean,
he was ahead of his time, man. He was tremendously talented, ahead of all these guys like Ricochet and Pac and and Ospreay and all these guys. He was the guy for a long time that was the guy that did breathtaking, high flying stuff that no one had ever seen before. So.
Sure, and him and Delirious were two of my favorite people from that I met through IWA. Especially love Delirious, man. That guy is awesome, and we both share an affinity for Dimmu Borgir. So
okay,
that was our bonding moment right there.
Yeah, both those guys were really cool. When they would come to town, they would stay at Vito's house and we would hang out for the weekend, and we all smoked, so that was kind of our bond. We would hang out and have great conversations to all hours of the night, drinking and smoking and just bullshitting and watching tapes and whatnot. So yeah, even Daisy Hayes, probably she's the coolest of them all. Like, she's the super cool, laid back chick that understood, that. How do I put this? She didn't speak up and put her opinion out there unless she could back it up. She didn't, like, girls in the wrestling business sometimes say stupid shit where you're just like, oh, why did I let you in the conversation? And she never did that. So, I always had a ton of respect for her.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're talking about Adam Rose. I tend to drift off, so you got to keep me on target here. Talking about Adam Rose, what did he say about the substance abuse policy?
So basically, what he said is, was that he did not violate the wellness policy, that he was taking prescriptions from his doctor within the guidelines of the policy, and that he thought that he had done everything according to the rules that he should have, and that he was not going to allow for that to damage his reputation or to hurt his family. He was going to release some paperwork or a bigger explanation or something, and that did not happen. So that leads me to believe that maybe he got himself in some shit from the office.
Probably. I mean, listen, if I'm Adam Rose and I'm looking around and I'm seeing Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and Cesaro, and now I'm looking down at NXT and there's Finn Balor and Apollo Crews is coming up now, Baron Corbin. The writing is on the wall for Adam Rose. It's just a matter. I wouldn't put it past them to do something like this to give them a reason in 2 months to release him.
Sure. They're
looking for a reason. They're going to release him sooner than later. His shelf life is, it's this long at this point. He's got to see. So much like CM Punk, if you feel like you were wronged and you feel like you're going to be on your way out anyway, speak up. And if he did follow the rules and he didn't break any of it and they're just fucking him over, someone eventually is going to stand up to the machine. And no one really has at this point yet and challenged their contracts as independent contractors. Someone needs to do that. And it seems like every time there's someone that's going to do that, they decide for whatever reason, or they're not a big enough name. And I don't know that Adam Rose is even a big enough name to be able to challenge it. CM Punk was a big enough name to challenge it, but you would see that one went the opposite way. He said some shit and now he's in court because he opened up his mouth and may have said some things that weren't 100% honest about what goes on inside the WWE. So I don't blame Adam Rose if he's just spouting off at this point. I wouldn't blame him one bit.
Well, and I think the one thing about how Punk approached the situation is I've known Punk a long time. I'm sure you have too. And he does not have very much touch when it comes to volatile situations.
Oh yeah.
He's not the kind of guy that you want to send in to schmooze somebody. He's if it's not already obvious to anybody who's watched anything that has to do with Punk, he has a chip on his shoulder. So and that he's an angry dude.
And he doesn't mind lying about people to make himself look better. He's done it to his family. He's done it to his friends. He's done it to this doctor. That's why I believe this doctor that Punk is lying about this and slandering him, because Punk has slandered a lot of people. He slandered his brother on a WWE DVD. He slandered his dad on WWE television, calling him an alcoholic, and then never gave him the comeuppance that anyone else would have gotten. Let's put it this way. I know for a fact that the day he went out and cut that promo where he threw his dad under the bus, calling him an alcoholic in that feud with Jericho leading up to WrestleMania, I can tell you for a fact that his dad found out about that through an email earlier in the day and said, "You're going to hear and see some things happen later on tonight on Raw. Don't worry, the good guy always wins in the end." That was the forewarning that he gave his father before he went out on television and buried him. Then, when it came time at WrestleMania to give Dad the payoff and have Dad be the one that slaps Chris Jericho and then Punk tosses him in the ring and locks on the Anaconda Vice or hits the go-to-sleep or whatever, instead, he gave that spot to his fake sister while his mom and dad sat in the nosebleed seats and watched. That's the type of person we're talking about here. He will lie, he will slander people to get himself over. And so it does not surprise me that he may have slandered this doctor.
Sure, no, and something tells me too that the WWE is just too big of a machine and have too much on the line to do some of the things that they were accused of doing. especially in this day of concussion awareness. And I'll tell you this from my personal experience, I got post-concussive syndrome. I had a battle with that. Like, I mean, the one thing nobody can say about me is that I did not have the balls to be retarded in the ring. Like, I did. I mean, dude, I took my ass whoopings like a man. And that's, let's be honest, the reason that I was booked is I beat up smaller guys, and then the bigger guys beat the crap out of me.
Right.
Like that was my place. And I'm fine with that, because for a while I had a full-time, I mean, wrestling legitimately was my full-time job for a while.
Yeah.
And how many guys get to say that? So,
right.
I mean, it is what it is, you know, but I'll tell you this, man, concussions are no joke. It is not worth taking unprotected headshots. It does not mean that you have bigger balls at this point. Maybe back then it did, but now it just means that you're dumb, man. Protect your head.
Yeah, absolutely. What we know now, it's not something that's you should be doing, you know.
Well,
so.
that kind of segues into another point. What about that Enzo concussion from last night? Jesus Christ, man! He wiped his head out.
I don't know what he was trying to do there. I don't know whether or not the idea was to slide under the baseball slide under the bottom rope, and Simon Gotch thought he was just going to take a header out through the ropes. You know what I mean? But I don't think you can. By all accounts, by anyone that has been in the ring, has come out and said that Gotch isn't to blame for what happened there. That's just a freak accident where he kind of got caught between what he wanted to do, and he hit the ropes awkwardly. In slow motion, it doesn't look that bad. When they slow-mo replayed it, you're like, oh, he just kind of snaps out. But in full motion, you see how hard he snapped back against the ring there. And then obviously you got to call it at that point. I'm disappointed because I am a huge Enzo fan. Huge. I truly believe that untouched, if they just let that guy be himself and do that gimmick, he will make them a ton of money. He is so good. I saw someone describe it accurately. He's like with The Rock or Steve Austin in that when you look at him and he's being this character, it's not forced. He is Enzo Amore. He is the certified G, the bona fide stud.
Right.
And that connection that he has an amazing amount of charisma. And I believe that Jimmy Jacobs has actually helped him out a lot, because Jimmy Jacobs is the master of being the little guy that knows how to be the little guy and make that work to his advantage. And I have to believe that Jimmy being there, it's just natural that those two got together and he passed some knowledge, because there's a confidence level that Enzo has. I'm not wild about Big Cass, but as Vito likes to say, he's cool by association. He just knows his place. I do think that they're missing Carmella. She was the third piece. She was part of that entrance that could get them over. She was the hot chick that they needed to kind of set them apart. She can wrestle a little bit, so you could put her in the women's mix. I don't know why they decided not to bring her up, but I fear that he's going to lose his push, whatever idea they had going forward, because there are no jokes with concussions. He's out for months now. They're not going to let him back in the ring for months.
And the thing, definitely, when I watched it, to me, it looked like he didn't commit to sliding or to going through the segment. It's like, it looked like he was trying to decide. And so I see all this quote-unquote smart mark, and usually the smart marks are the dumbest marks. And not that I'm using the word mark derogatory, because let's be honest, we're all marks to some degree, right?
Sure.
But usually the guys that are out there, like the ones bashing Simon Gotch right now, are the least intelligent to the business whatsoever.
Exactly. Because
anybody who's ever seen any sort of wrestling on an intelligent level, I mean, it should have been clear that it just didn't look like he decided what he was going to do.
Exactly. He got caught in between, and then he hit the ropes awkwardly, and he snapped back and unprotected. You know, he hit his head really hard, and that's going to knock you silly. He was clearly unconscious when he hit the ring. He's lucky that it's just a concussion and not something worse, because it looked like it could have been worse. You know, you get thoughts of Perro Aguayo, where it looked so innocent, and all of a sudden he's dead. You know, like we're at that point now where we've seen it happen that you fear that until otherwise notified that this guy, okay, he is moving and he is responding to people and he's talking to the medics, because for a minute there you're like, man, did we just watch a dude die on television? I mean, that could have been the case.
Sure. And, hey, can you still hear me all right?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you faded a little bit there, but I can hear you.
Okay. I'm gonna check my audio settings real quick. It feels like I kind of kicked out some.
You went a little bit distant there. I'm not sure what that happened.
Okay. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. I know that was kind of a weird thing to throw in there, but yeah, I think that Enzo is money. Like my kids love him. I have fun watching him, and especially like if you watch things, his in-ring work is solid.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do 9,000 flips. He's not Ricochet, as you said before. I mean, that's not what he brings to the table.
Nope.
But what he does bring to the table, he brings a lot of it, and he's very good at it. So I definitely hope that it's not as severe as some of the reports are saying.
Yeah, he is Ricky Morton reincarnated. He is going to make a ton of money getting beat up and hot tagging to Big Cass.
Sure.
There's going to be a lot of money to be made there. So.
Well, and I think that Cass plays his part well. I don't think that Cass is the leading man.
No.
I think that Cass is the Billy Gunn to Enzo's Road Dogg.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. He's cool by association. That's
Sure.
all. But you can understand that Vince looks at him and goes, "Oh, that guy's the star of the group."
Oh, yeah. Sure, because he's huge.
Right.
And again, I think that Cass is good at what he does. But I don't think that without Enzo, I don't think that he's over at all, really, to be honest with you. And I kind of hate to say that because for all intents and purposes, he seems like a good dude. But
yeah, he's Drew McIntyre without Enzo.
Sure. What do you think about the rumor of Ring of Honor being interested in TNA?
Yeah, we talked about this. Vito and I recorded an episode of We Got Heat yesterday, and we talked about this on our show as well. It makes sense. It makes sense because they have their own television here in the United States. They've got that on lock. It's their own station. They don't have to go look for it. They don't have to go pay for it. It is their own programming, and the Sinclair has every reason to see it succeed and help it succeed.
Sure.
The one thing they don't have is overseas. And that's the one thing that TNA has is overseas contracts. It's the one thing that a TNA defender will tell you, well, they're huge overseas. They've got all these contracts overseas. So I could see Sinclair saying, yeah, it makes sense for us to buy that for the tape library and for the time slots and the contracts that they have, especially when this thing where they got the tennis network and they're going to rebrand that as this new sports network.
Sure.
If you have TNA where you have all their archives and you can just roll out, even if it's old TNA, you can fill time with old TNA shows on your network, filling with also with what they're saying is a 2-hour Ring of Honor television show. They're going to be moving to 2 hours. Well, there you go. If you're starting a new sports network, now you have 4 hours at least a week of content that you can count on. So
Sure.
From Ring of Honor's perspective, it makes a ton of business sense to me. What I don't see them doing is allowing Dixie to hang on to Control or anything. I think it's 100% or nothing. Like they want the whole thing and they're going to do with it what they want, or they're not going to get involved.
Well, and really, that's probably for the best at this point. I mean, TNA under Dixie is terrible, and it's been terrible for a long time.
It's been dying a very slow death. For as long as Vito and I have been doing podcasts, we have been talking about, is this going to be the year that TNA finally dies? And it really feels like this year is the year that TNA finally dies. Like they're done. Like all their stars are now going to NXT. The pay is not what people are being owed money. I mean, all the signs of a company that's not going to last very long is what TNA is showing. So, I don't like TNA. I've never been a big fan, never really watched it. Just never really did anything for me. So I won't miss it. It won't change my watching schedule or my life in any way when TNA goes away.
And I personally haven't watched TNA in a long time, but I do think that there was a point in time when TNA had something that was unique, And I think that as you saw them move away from featuring the X Division and Innovation, I think that you saw the TNA just became. I mean, I know everybody says it, but it literally just became like a castaway and old folks' home, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was guys went there for a paycheck. Ric Flair needed money, he went to TNA, made some money. Hulk Hogan needed money, went to TNA, made some money. Neither one of those guys put over TNA for the money that they got paid. They did not do enough advertising. Hulk Hogan would go on national TV and radio all the time and never say the words TNA at all.
And he would talk about WWE.
Yeah. Well, Ric Flair had said when he was in TNA, he made a point of in an interview of saying in TNA he would be in the airport and people would come up to him and they would say, "When are you coming back to wrestling, Rick?" And he'd say, "Well, I'm actually still wrestling. I'm wrestling for this company, TNA. They're a smaller company. Nobody knows what TNA is. The large audience of wrestling fans, the average wrestling fan has no idea that TNA exists at all because they suck at branding. They're not very good at getting their brand out there and marketing." Oh, I can't hear you, man. Now you've disappeared. There you go. I think it's your connection. I think once you're fooling with that, it clears it up.
Yeah, I think I might have a short in this cord.
But you're better now.
Okay. I think I definitely know that I'm in the minority with this, and I can totally accept this. But I'm just going to throw this out here, man. A little part of me wishes that Ric Flair still wrestled. I'm just going to throw it out there. I know I'm the only one, especially because it was pretty bad in TNA. It was definitely not anything that Ric Flair was proud of, I'm sure.
But the blade jobs were epic.
Oh my God!
TNA blade jobs from Ric Flair are you should go back and watch them just to watch that. Like on a weekly basis, he would bust himself open and bleed everywhere. It was fantastic. Sure. So I don't know that I want to see him wrestle, but I will say this: I think that they should run with drunk Ric Flair and like make him a manager and make him like boozed up like party guy Ric Flair, and he's a manager, and have him have a stable of guys where he's a legitimate manager. Like, I want Ric Flair as a manager. That, I think there's money to be made. If you understand that it's wild and crazy Ric Flair, but just let him go, I think you got money there.
And I'm from the South. You're living in the South now. You're originally from Chicago, right?
Correct. Chicago, Milwaukee area, yeah.
Right. I'm actually from Houston, Texas. I know you're down in Texas.
Yep.
But in the South, you do not watch wrestling and not love Ric Flair. So a little part of me will always love Ric Flair.
Sure.
I mean, if I could meet Ric Flair, I would wait in line right now. I would wait in line to meet Ric Flair, and I would show no shame. I'd post my picture on Facebook, and I'd be like, eat a dick if people made fun of me. I'd be like,
yeah.
So,
he's one of the few legends that I haven't had a chance to actually meet in person, shake hands with.
Oh, let me tell you you want to hear my Hulk Hogan story?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and then we're gonna switch gears after this. I know you're probably ready to get into the other stuff, but
yeah,
me and my family, we just went down to Clearwater on vacation.
Okay,
so we're hanging out and we're going around checking out the scenery on spring break, and we're driving down. I want to say it's like Gulf Boulevard or something like that. I don't know. It's right down right on the coastal Clearwater Beach, right? Okay. So we see a Hulk Hogan statue in this strip mall, right? Just chilling out, and I was like, well, we got to stop. My kids want this picture with Hulk Hogan. I'm not going to say no. So we pull out, and we notice he's got a little shop there. It's Hogan's Beach Shop, right?
Right. Yeah, I see it on I follow his Facebook, so he's always posting shit from there.
Well, my youngest son, his name's Fred. He has sensory processing disorder, okay. And he loves wrestling, and he loves Hulk Hogan, man.
Excellent.
So he's like, Daddy, can we meet Hulk Hogan, please? So I'm in the shop, and I'm like, look, I was like, does Hogan ever come in here? Like, what do I need to do to get my kid in front of Hogan, right? And he, they're like, well, he comes in sometimes, blah blah blah. So we stopped at the store probably 3 times trying to run into Hogan.
Right. Okay.
But now, it's going to get a little stalkerish, but just hang on with me.
But hey, it's all right.
Sure. On a side note, we noticed Bushwhacker Luke has a gym right on the corner of the same building. Yeah, I guess that's where Hogan works out too. But I went up there, and Bushwhacker Luke, one of the coolest dudes ever. He had us come in. He signed autographs, took pictures. Super cool dude. And as soon as I mentioned the sheep herders, he was so much happier to talk to me. So,
I bet, because everyone goes in there and wants to talk about the Bushwhackers, and he's like, I hate the Bushwhackers.
Yeah. Well, so I buy a Hulkamania shirt, the yellow Hulkamania shirt from the Hogan's Beat Shop, because you got to buy something.
Of course.
And I would come out, and this lady's like, "Oh, you know, Hulk Hogan just lives right down the street." So now I'm on a mission, and you guys like the lady actually tells me how to get to Hulk Hogan's house. So I'm in my head. I'm like, how big of a dick move is it for me? Would it be for me to stop at Hulk Hogan's house to get my little child, like my child, who you know, he basically has autism, but he's friendly. Okay. Like he likes people. Basically, like he seeks out people. So that's the main difference between what he has and autism.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot that I wouldn't do to get him to meet Hulk Hogan.
Sure.
So we don't go knock on his door or anything crazy like that, but we are walking back to our hotel, and I got this yellow Hulkamania shirt on, and this lady's like, if you want to meet Hulk Hogan, he's in the Opal Sands Resort eating dinner right now. So I'm like, damn it, dude. Okay. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to get my kid this autograph. And I walk in there, and I see Hulk Hogan. He's just chilling, eating with his new wife and all that.
And it's Hulk Hogan. That's good.
Yeah, it's Hogan, and I'm there, and I'm looking, and I'm like, dude, I can't bother this guy while he's eating dinner, man. That's the ultimate dick move, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna chill out here, and when he comes out, I'm gonna let my kid run up to him, ask him if I can get a quick picture, and just be in and out of this without shaming myself too much.
Mm-hmm.
And he, so we're sitting there waiting, and this lady, and keep in mind, we're filthy, dude. We are so filthy from a day at the beach.
Right.
And this is like a super, super expensive hotel. And this lady comes up to us, and she's like, "Will you guys be dining with us tonight?" And I'm like, no.
No, we will not.
I'm like,
we
no.
came for Hogan.
Yeah, she's like, well, what are you doing? Are you a guest here? I'm like, nope, no, I'm just hanging out waiting for Hulk Hogan. And she's like, well, he's in there with his family. And I was like, yeah, I know. That's why I saw him, and I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to disrespect you guys or him. I was just gonna hang out here with my kid, and when he came out, asked for a picture. So. You could tell she was trying to get me to leave, but I'm like, screw that, man. My kid's getting this picture. So I'm waiting, and she comes out like an hour and a half later, and she goes, were you waiting for Hogan? Yeah, he went out the back door. We told him there was a crowd. And I was like, there's two. I was like, there's me and a 7-year-old boy.
Oh,
I was like, so I totally guilt tripped her. I was like, dude, he's got this going on and this going on, and all he wanted to do. We took this whole trip. The only reason we came to Clearwater was so we can meet Hulk Hogan, which is a bold-faced lie.
Right.
This lady's damn near in tears.
Of course. Well, she should be.
Yeah, but I almost met Hulk Hogan. That was it. Just wanted my kid to get a picture with Hogan, and some waitress cock-blocked me.
Yeah, that fucking bitch.
So anyway, before we run out of
let's
time,
take a left turn. I love left turns. I love sharp left turns into conversations that are nothing like what we were just talking about.
Yeah, so let's get into this now. Vito mentioned it, and I know we kind of briefly talked about it. You're a big Graham Hancock fan, right?
Yes, read the first book, Fingerprints of the Gods,
and
I'm 3/4 of the way through Magicians of the Gods now. I'm actually probably more than 3/4 of the way through it. I'm probably 100 pages from done with that, which is the follow-up that came out last year to Fingerprints of the Gods. Kind of 20 more years of research, what he's found about the original ideas that he posed in Fingerprints of the Gods. And having read it, I am a firm believer in his theory. I believe that there was a civilization, whether alien or human, in some form or fashion, that lived on this planet that was far advanced as far as knowledge of science and astronomy and the stars, and an acute knowledge that there should not have been 12 to 15,000 years ago.
Sure.
But there is, and there's evidence to show that there is. And like in Magicians of the Gods, he talks about they discovered Göbekli Tepe? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Göbekli Tepe. It's in Turkey. It's a site that they found that was purposely buried, so they know they can carbon date it with accuracy because it was they know that soil was purposely put there up against that at a certain point, and they can carbon date that stuff. So, and that carbon dates to what they think is 12,000 years ago. Well, 10,000 years ago, the world suffered a cataclysmic event where a mile of ice dropped on the planet in literally seconds. They've found mammoths with undigested plants and food in their stomach that were flash frozen.
So they went quick.
Yeah. But that also means that there was vegetation, and then like that, in a matter of hours, the entire globe is, for the most part, has a mile of ice thrown on top of it. At that point, there are some civilizations, and I believe this civilization, there are members of this civilization, whatever it may be, alien or whatever, that survived this event and even warned of this event. And the Noah's Ark stories that everyone is familiar with, I believe that there was a giant flood and that people were warned. I don't believe it was Noah, because what I have found and what their evidence seems to be to me is there are the same story with different character names.
Sure.
From
me and
civilizations.
Vito kind of touched on that too.
Yeah. Civilizations all over the world that would have never have known of each other, but have the same story. So I do believe there was a cataclysmic event when that ice ultimately melted. There was a great flood, and that people were warned. And what happened to those very smart people, that civilization, I don't know, and I can't explain. But all the evidence seems to point to me, at least, that there was an advanced civilization that built the pyramids, that built some of the ruins that are in South America, that are directly aligned to a T, to a mathematical. It all revolves around like the number 72 and the precession of the sun, and you can understand that people of a hunter-gatherer mindset, they can't explain what's going on in the sky. So they all try to explain it the way that they can. But this one civilization, and they did it from all these other civilizations, that the same people, and they're all described the same as people in white people in white robes with long white beards. And they come in, they help these hunter-gatherers learn certain skills that allow them to carry on population, and now we've gotten to the point where we are some 10,000 years later. A lot can happen in 10,000 years with a society. You can learn some things, but they were learned basic skills, and then all the same stories then say those people go off and disappear, and they don't know where those people go, but they have yet to come back.
Sure.
I believe that story. I really truly believe that makes sense to me. And there is enough science to back it up. What do you think of Graham Hancock's theories, man?
I'm a fan of Graham Hancock and Eric Von Daniken and those kind of guys, and I think that to me it all boils down to math, right? Because math is the universal, it's the universal explainer of everything that ever existed and ever was.
Math and astronomy, I think, yeah,
absolutely. And my thing is this: let's just break it down to basic mathematics, right? And I'm going to go, I'm a strong believer in aliens, totally believe in aliens. And I believe that aliens have been to this planet. I believe it's possible they are involved in this planet somehow now. Do I know? Of course not. I mean, is it possible they're not? Absolutely. But to me, it's very possible they are. And there are very legitimate reasons for why they may not be involved, on a more open basis, or maybe not involved at all now. I wouldn't want to land on a planet where they had nuclear weapons and they detonated thousands of them. You know what I mean?
Now when you say aliens, if you don't mind me kind of stopping there, because I'm interested in this. When you say aliens, what do you picture they look like? Are they human-like, or are they what we've seen in the movies where there's some sort of foreign race or lizard people, or what do you believe what these aliens look like?
Well, I think that there are different types of aliens, because I believe that there are literally an unlimited and uncountable number of planets that have life on it.
Star Wars style.
Sure, yeah, a little less fancy, but my theory is, and I'll get back to that in one second. But my thing is that there's literally in this universe that never ends, there's an uncountable amount of planets. It never stops. It just goes on forever, and there's just never-ending planets, right? So let's say we try to put a number on that, and we say there's 1 trillion planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get my calculator out real quick because I want to make sure that I'm not totally going off base here.
Right.
But let's say there's 1 trillion planets, which is there's at least 1 trillion. Can we agree on that?
I would, yeah. Well, for the purposes of this exercise, let's go with 1 trillion.
Okay, so hold on. I'm doing the math right here. Okay, so we got 1 trillion planets. Let's say that 1% of those planets are capable of having human life, right? Just 1%. That leaves us with, let's see, 1 billion planets, right? So let's say 1% of those planets that are capable of having life do have life. That's 1 mil. Hold on, I think I screwed this up. Let's see. Okay, so now we're left with 1 billion.
Get your hands out. Get your shoes off.
Let me count my fingers. Yeah. So now we're left with 1 billion planets that do actually have life, and let's say 1% of those have intelligent life, right? So now we're left with hundreds of thousands of planets at least that have intelligent life. And 1% of those we still have thousands of planets that had life that's more intelligent than us. Mm-hmm. And then if 1% of those people, those planets are more intelligent than us, have reached a higher interplanetary travel than us. I mean, we're left with thousands of planets that may have had interaction with us at some point. So mathematically speaking, to me, like, it's very logical to believe that there are aliens out there. And when I say aliens, I'm not necessarily talking about little green aliens, but there is this document that was released by the it was released by a guy who supposedly was in the Air Force, and I'll do some more research on it next time you come on. Mm-hmm. But it lists out thousands of races of aliens, and he said that this is an actual government document, and I fully admit to people listening that this is a little out there, but he goes into detailed descriptions of what they look like, how they interact. This book is like the encyclopedia of alien species. So, you know, to me, they could look like humans. They could look like, I mean, it's possible that they would look like a reptile, or you know, God knows, maybe they're energy forms. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe they're not like what we perceive as a human form, or an act. Yeah, I know what you're saying, like a massive.
Sure.
Form.
Well, and are you familiar with the Hopi Indians?
I mean, I've certainly heard the name. I don't know the story intimately, no.
Well, I want to say, it could be the 5th, but I want to say that the Hopi Indians believe that we're on the 4th version of this world. So that prior to the world that we live in right now, there's been 3, maybe 4, but I think it's 3 complete civilizations and cycles of the world, and that these civilizations built these huge, great technological marvels, and they were far ahead of what we are now. And then there was some cataclysmic event that basically reset the earth. And what I think is very possible is that there was a de-evolution of man at some point in time. And it's very realistic to believe that this would be possible if you just grab onto the fact that if right now everything was destroyed. Let's say there was just a nuclear winter right now, and the books were destroyed, the internet was destroyed, history was basically wiped off the planet, and then over the course of these millions of years or thousands of years, the Earth would take back everything that we've built.
Yes, absolutely. I once heard an interview with a guy, and I'll quickly interject and let you get back, but I think it kind of reinforces the point you're trying to make here, is that if we were to have a cataclysmic event like a mile's worth of ice covering 90% of the globe, all the technology, all the buildings, everything, the only things that would survive that 10,000 years from now would be the Great Pyramids and Mount Rushmore. Those would be the only things that, if a cataclysmic event happened on this planet 10,000 years from now, because of the breakdown of metal and everything under pressure, it would just disintegrate into nothing. We would have no evidence, because Vito always says, well, where are the cars, or where are the flying machines that they had before us? We would never know, because they disintegrate. They've been covered by rock and soot and lava and all different kinds of nonsense. So that goes along with your point that, yes, I think that makes sense that we are on our fourth, or who knows how many different planets we've been through.
Well, and we can't lose sight of the fact that everything that we have built comes from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things would sooner or later go back to the earth. I mean, there are worms that eat plastic and styrofoam and turn it back into dirt. So, I mean, it's possible that all of these things have been broken down and recycled back through the earth. And let's talk about the sheet of ice for a second. Let's say the sheet of ice hit tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Boom. Just like that. Blink of an eye. Everything's gone. Everything's gone. There's nothing left except for a few small bands of people who are now left with only the fleeting raw materials that are left. And so that's what they're building the things up. And let's say me and you survive. And we have kids, not together, of course. Let's say, we have our kids and we're telling them, man, we used to fly in these planes and we used to drive in these cars, and their minds can't comprehend this because they've never seen it. Like, to them, there's no basis in reality. People can't fly. But here we are telling them we flew in these great machines, these great birds. And so to them now, when they retell the story, it's a bird, or it's a god, or it's a who knows what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Well, look at it this way. There's civilizations. We're in 2016 as we record this, via the internet, looking at each other from two different places on the planet, electronically being buzzed over the sky so that we can communicate with each other. Sure. But on this same planet, there are civilizations in the Amazon that never had contact with the outside world. Sure. What if they're the only one? What if a cataclysmic event happens, but where they isn't affected, and they're the ones that have to carry on society? Right. How long would it take those people to get back to the place that we're at now? Tens of thousands of years, probably.
Well, and imagine what an airplane looks like to those people.
Right. And they've never seen anything. Yeah.
Well, and we know for sure that there are tribes in the jungles, that there are whole societies with histories and traditions and customs who've never even seen a white person.
Right.
You know
amazing,
what I'm saying?
Right? That's crazy.
Right. It is, but I guarantee you at some point they see a plane fly over, or a drone, or God knows what, but they can see that through the brush. And what is that to them?
Sure, it's a weird flying machine where you make up a story, a myth, to try to explain it, because your simple mind, your hunter-gatherer simple mind, can't possibly process a flying object. So you think it's a UFO. I mean, don't you? You've never seen such a thing before. You don't know what it is. It's got lights. It's buzzing, and it's got camera, or it's got stuff on it. You don't know what any of that stuff is, so you think it's a UFO. But little do you know that there are skyscrapers, in parts of the world where we're so advanced, that technology is so advanced that those people couldn't comprehend a cell phone. You know what I mean? If a cell phone existed 10,000 years ago and everything was destroyed, the cell phone's not going to exist. It's not going to make it. It's not indestructible. We know that clearly. If you ever had a cell phone, you know it's not indestructible.
God knows I have a graveyard of iPhones at my house. So.
Yeah. So it's and you have to try to wrap your mind around how long 10,000 years is.
Oh, sure.
People see that number and they go, "Oh, that's a big number." But think about a year in 10,000 years. And if we're lucky as human beings, we're here for 100 in 10,000 years, how many generations of people happen in that amount of time. I mean, it is completely feasible that the world could be destroyed and then built back up to something to where we are now, only to be destroyed again and have to build back up again. It only makes sense.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna hit this real quick. And I love to hear it because I gather from some things that you said earlier that you're probably not going to agree with this. So I'm ready for it. And then I know we got to wrap things up or Vito's going to kill me because he said keep it to an hour. So
no worries. As long as the conversation's good, you can keep flowing.
My thing I'm going to say is I don't necessarily believe that carbon dating is a fact. I'm going to throw that out there, and I'm going to tell you why. My thing with carbon dating is there's no 100% foolproof way to know for sure what happens to carbon over 1 million years while it's bathed in lava and then cooled down by water and then frozen in ice. There's no foolproof way. So it's possible that carbon dating is not correct.
I will say I agree with you, but based on where science is and where we are with our knowledge on the subject, it is the closest thing to give us an idea of what it is. You're right. It could be off by a lot. Either way, maybe the Christians that believe the world is only 6,000 years old or whatever it is, maybe they're right. Maybe carbon dating is wrong and but I'm going to trust science, at least the science that we know that has been tried and tested. I'm going to go with that as the best answer we have at this point.
Well, and that's all you do. That's all you can do because I mean clearly it's an educated guess,
right?
But that's what I believe it is an educated guess. And I definitely am not saying it's not real or that it's not accurate. I'm just saying that I don't believe that I don't believe there's any real way to know for sure.
And I believe if you were to sit down with a scientist who spent his life working on carbon dating, he would probably say the same thing to you. That it's based on the knowledge that we have gathered at this point in our scientific minds as a society, this is the best that we can come up with. But you have to be, if you look at science in any way and you believe in science in any way like I do, you must be open to the idea that new science, new information will lead you to a possible new conclusion that may go against what you've believed all along. You have to be open to that in order to truly believe in science. Otherwise, you have to take a leap of faith, and I don't believe in leaps of faith.
Sure. Well, Ben, it's been great having you on. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because I don't want to get I don't want to get Vito too mad, especially since I got to ask him to kind of edit this together since I don't have any sound editing software.
Gotcha. Yeah, you got to ask nicely then. But yeah, sure. No, man, anytime. I'd love to continue the conversation. Let's not end here. We can just drop the conversation, pick up the conversation anytime, man.
Well, absolutely. And one thing I would love to talk to you more about, hopefully here in the very near future, is I'm super intrigued by a thing called the Black Knight satellite. And if you're listening to this, do a little research on it, form your own opinion. But I'd love for you to have the opportunity to kind of look into some things. And then I'd love to have you back on and touch base about that.
Well, hey man, I'm about to finish this book. I'm going to be looking for a new book. If there's a book that kind of helps me wrap my mind around the idea of what this is, hit me up on Facebook. Let me know, man. I'd be happy to read up and, be knowledgeable on the subject when we come back on and talk about it.
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. I appreciate you, man.
All right, man. Till next time, onegimmickworld.com. Thanks very much.